1-minute warning. Good evening. Per the rules and procedures for conduct of the Board of Adjustment meetings, in the absence of the chairperson and vice chairperson, any other member shall call the board to order, whereupon a chairperson pro tem shall be elected from the members present to preside.
The July 27th, 2023 meeting for the Board of Adjustment is now called to order. Can I get a roll call, Madam Secretary?
Board Member Babcock?
Here.
Vice Chairperson Baker? Chairperson Keller? Board Member Duval?
Here.
Board Member Nasalik?
Here.
Board Member Thurkel?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Do we have any nominations for Chairperson Pro Tem?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to nominate Duval, Mr. Duval.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Madam Secretary, will you please proceed with a roll call vote to elect Board Member Duval as Chairperson Pro Tem?
Board Member Babcock?
Yes.
Board Member Duval?
Yes.
Board Member Nasalik?
Yes.
Board Member Thurkel?
Yes.
We have 4 votes yea, 0 nay. Motion carried. Board Member Duval will now serve as Chairperson Pro Tem for the July 27th, 2023 Board of Adjustment meeting.
All right, the first item on the agenda is the approval of the May meeting minutes. I would like to entertain a motion to approve the minutes from the May 23rd, 2023 Board of Adjustment meeting.
I'd like to move that the minutes be approved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any questions or comments from the board? Madam Secretary, please provide a roll call vote.
Board Member Babcock?
Yes.
Chairperson Pro Tem Duval?
Yes.
Board Member Nasalik?
Yes.
Board Member Thurkel?
Yes.
4 votes yea, 0 nay. Motion carried.
Second item on the agenda is the approval of the June meeting minutes. I would like to entertain a motion to approve the minutes from the June 22nd, 2023 Board of Adjustment meeting.
I'd like to move that the minutes from June be approved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Do we have any questions or comments from the board? Madam Secretary, please provide a roll call vote.
Board Member Babcock?
Yes.
Chairperson Pro Tem Duval?
Yes.
Board Member Nasalik?
Yes.
Board Member Thurkel?
Yes.
4 votes yea, 0 nay. Motion carried.
We move on to our next agenda item. During the May 25th, 2023 board meeting, a request for a variance from Branson Municipal Code Section 94-135.7 pertaining to signage for the property located at 2915 West 76 Country Boulevard, Branson, Missouri, was approved by the Board of Adjustment. I will entertain a motion to approve the findings of fact and conclusions of law prepared by the city attorney, which reflects the discussions and findings after our hearing.
So move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Do we have any further discussion? Hearing none, Madam Secretary, may I have a roll call vote?
Board Member Babcock?
Yes.
Chairperson Pro Tem Duval?
Yes.
Board Member Nasalik?
Yes.
Board Member Thurkel?
Yes.
4 votes yea, 0 nay. Motion carried.
Sure. Next on the agenda is a request for a variance, which was filed by the applicant Wilson Wagner from Wilson Civil Design LLC on behalf of B5 Properties LLC. Madam Secretary, will you please provide an introduction for this item?
This is a request for a variance from Branson Municipal Code, Section 94-87, pertaining to audible electronic devices for the property located at 550 Branson Landing Boulevard, Branson, Missouri.
Before we proceed, please note that we are recording tonight's meeting so that in case of an appeal, it can be transcribed. Before you speak during this public hearing, we will have you sworn in by the recorder. Once they have finished, we will ask you to then please fill out the sign-in sheet at the podium, state and spell your name for the record, and give your address. I will now open the public hearing for Wilson Wagner's request for a variance. We will first hear a report on this variance from the city staff, and then we will hear a report from the applicant. Everybody who wishes to speak on this matter tonight will have an opportunity to be heard. We ask that you be mindful of everyone's time and refrain from making comments that are repetitive. We ask that the members of the public limit their comments to 5 minutes or less. Planning Director Colesi, would you like to present a report on behalf of the city staff?
I do, and I do. Okay. Thank you. So, I apologize. So we have a request before us today with regards to the presentation of a variance to the section 94-87 of the Branson Municipal Code pertaining to audible electronic devices. This particular proposal is located at 550 Branson Landing Boulevard in Branson, Missouri. And this particular project, to give some further context, has already gone through the City Planning and Zoning Commission with regards to a special use hearing that was just held at last month's meeting, knowing that this variance was going to be before this body. So just to provide a little bit of record of that particular item. So with that said, we actually have a couple items to think about. So if you look at, in particular, this property, we have the applicant being Scooters. They have a drive-in style proposal before us. This was the applicant was Wilson Civil Design LLC by Wilson Wagner, and the property owner is B5 Properties LLC. The current zoning for this particular property is neighborhood commercial, and the north, the south are also in the neighborhood commercial district. The property just to the east of this property is a low-density residential district, which I would just like to take a moment to remind you of that particular item as we go forward. And then to the west, across the street, would be community commercial. The existing conditions, which you can kind of see on the exhibit on the screen, this is actually the proposed facility on the site. Currently, this site is vacant. Therefore, we're looking at the redevelopment and infill development of this particular piece of property. As I had mentioned just a minute ago, this particular property proposes a drive-through commercial facility within this neighborhood commercial district. And as I had mentioned earlier, it was at the July 6th Planning Commission meeting to which this was given a special use approval for the drive-through, contingent upon receiving the variance request for the separation distance for the speaker box. If you specifically look at the Branson Municipal Code, we're looking at section 94-87, where we're looking at the off-street parking requirements. We're also looking at subsection 1A, where under the general standards, audible electronic devices such as loudspeakers, automobile service order devices, and similar instruments shall not be located with 250 feet of any residential dwelling unit. And I may, if I could, just make you pay attention to the residential dwelling unit piece of this. So further, I would just like to go on to say that if you look at the arrows on this particular exhibit, and I'm actually going to turn around, hopefully you can still pick up my audio. The property line is approximately in this vicinity. And then there are, as I mentioned, low density residential district just to the east of this particular site, and there are homes. So this first horizontal red line is actually measuring the distance between where the proposed speaker box is presented and the closest residential unit. So then it also, if you take this residential unit and measure 250 feet, which is what I mentioned was required in the zoning ordinance, you can see that it does not meet that minimum separation distance from a residential unit. However, one thing that you cannot see on this two-dimensional view of this particular property, and I'm sure that the board members, you would be familiar with some of the site characteristics, that the elevation to which the building is proposed is much, much higher than the homes to the rear of the site. In fact, there's a fairly significant steep slope, so again, I'm going to use my highlighter. Any of the property beyond this point, the majority of the site, approximately a third of the site, is actually fairly unbuildable. So it actually is putting a unique characteristic on this site to not allow any additional further development to the east of this site, or would be to the rear of this particular property. So that's something that would come into play with why potentially this variance request is before your consideration today. And then beyond that, we had an opportunity as staff was reviewing this particular item that we had asked the applicant for information with regards to how much audio, what the volume level that would be produced by the speaker box would be. For this particular audible device, the applicant has the ability to have, by software, limit the amount of volume that can be produced from the audio box. It actually can be done in a couple of different modes. Number one, it can be done either by limiting the amount of volume in general and max or cap it at a certain volume level, or it potentially even can be relative to the ambient volume in this area. Again, another thing to highlight is if you're familiar with this particular corridor, just north of the hospital and just south of the US 65 interchange, you would know that there would be quite a large amount of traffic. This is actually one of the highest traveled routes in particular segments within the city. So as you can understand, there would be a significant amount of traffic on this site. One other additional piece of context is this site, and I'm actually going to have to look at staff to help me out with this. This had previously come in for consideration in what time frame? 2 years ago. So at that time, the applicant had looked at a smaller site, and to make the queuing or the stacking of any vehicles on the site, which I'm going to again use the highlighter to highlight what I'm speaking about, they can access the site and then queue this entire length, whereas when the site was approximately half the size, the stacking length was not nearly as long as being proposed at this time. So the redesign of the site does allow for better traffic flow, which certainly as staff, we review anything, that'd be a primary consideration for safety of the site. However, that does not necessarily make the issue of the audio box any easier for the particular applicant to make work within the zoning requirements. So with that said, I will go ahead and take pause, and I'd be happy to provide any clarification of anything that I said, but those are the key factors that I would like you to pay attention to for this particular proposal.
So in just confirming what you presented is clear from what we're talking about, it is the staff's opinion that there is a circumstance that is peculiar to the property in question, namely the difference in elevation of this property with the distance for the residential area directly to the east, that an elevation of 60 to 70 feet.
Yes, sir.
Is that correct?
Yes.
And then also I noticed in the exhibit that the area in between the proposed property and the described residential area to the east, there is a wooded area in between that property as well.
That is correct, and it's actually a
Okay.
fairly mature wooded area. You
Okay.
are absolutely correct.
Okay. And then just also to be clear, for this district, this property has been approved by the Planning Commission for an acceptable use in this district as well.
So this would actually be required to go through a special use, and they were actually granted the approval for that contingent upon this variance request. So yes, that was done on July the 6th.
Okay. Do we have any other questions?
Mark, where did you say the property line was? Is it down the hill?
Yes, so that's one thing that is a pretty unique thing about this particular property. So again, I'm going to use my highlighter to highlight what I'm talking about. The property line is in this, it's kind of hard to see, but it's in this general vicinity. So as you can see, the rear of the site, the maximum developed area is about this area. So if you actually measure the distance, only about 2/3 of the length or the depth of the lot is actually usable due to the
So
steep
it's
slopes to the
basically
rear.
at the bottom of the hill
Yes,
for the property line?
yes.
And the way the code is written, does that to the property line or to the structure?
So the 250-foot separation is actually from the speaker box to a structures. It's not to the property line. Yes, sir.
Could you define a speaker box?
Actually, I apologize. I do not have that in front of me.
And which way it projects?
Let me see if I do have the answer to that question. I do have to apologize. I do not have that directly in front of me. But generally speaking, the speaker box would be an audible speaker that would allow like a fast food order style development to occur so that a customer could use the drive-through lane to request an order for their order. So the speaker would allow okay, thank you. Jennifer's just provided me the definition from the ordinance. I will go ahead and read it, but it would allow the customer to be able to interact with the employee in the facility. So the definition within the ordinance is an audible electronic devices such as loudspeakers, automobile service order devices, and other similar instruments should not be located within 200 feet. I will restart. Audible electronic devices such as loudspeakers, automobile service order devices, and similar instruments shall not be located within 250 feet of any residential dwelling unit. So that is literally the
Well,
extent.
that is not a broadcast speaker then.
No, sir, so it would not be intended for displaying music or things like that for users of the site. It would just clearly be to communicate with, between the customer and the employee
How
within the
audible is it from the street?
Sorry?
If you're driving down the street, can you hear it?
Well, and that actually is one thing to provide additional clarity on in context. So the audible devices are typically, they're directional. So it would be pointed at whatever direction the vehicles would be at. So in this particular circumstance, it would actually be faced from the rear of the site to the east, facing east. It would not actually be directed towards the roadway.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Colossi. We will now hear from the applicant or their representative regarding the request. I would welcome you to come forward. Please be sure to sign in and give us your name, spell your name for the record, and provide your address for the record. And then prior to presenting your request, you will be sworn in.
We do have our applicant online, and he will be able to present, or the engineer for the applicant.
Mr. Wagoner, are you able to hear us? Mr. Wagoner, are you able to hear us?
Give us just a moment as we're working through some technical difficulties.
Hello, this is Wilson. Not seeing any video or audio there.
Sounds like we have you online.
Okay, I hear a voice now.
Welcome.
Thank you.
And Mr. Wagoner, just for the clarity of the record, you are slightly muffled, so if you could access your microphone better, that will aid our reporter.
Okay, sure, I'll try that. Thank you.
Okay, at this time, you will be sworn in by our reporter.
Would you raise your right
Okay.
hand, please? Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Thank you, Mr. Wagoner. Will you please present your request?
Sure. Okay. So I am Wilson Wagoner of Wilson Civil Design. My address is 10 West Waters Edge Drive in Belleville, Illinois. Tonight we're presenting a request for a variance on a speaker location for the Scooters Coffee project at 550 North, or it's a Branson Landing Boulevard. And we're requesting that the location of the speaker be at approximately 170 feet away from the residential properties, as we're not able to accommodate the 250-foot distance requirement that's required by code. And at 250 feet from the back of the residential properties, we've observed that the speaker would just be several feet away from the existing right-of-way at the state highway, which would not allow for the queuing, the stacking lane for the drive-through to be located in that location. So we have the site configured to meet codes otherwise, and the drive-through stacking lane needs to be looped around at the back of the property to allow for the stacking, and then approach to the building at the north end of the property. We're requesting an 80-foot difference from the variance or from the required distance of 250 feet. And there's been some documentation that's been provided. I'm not able to see anything on my screen for any exhibits, but there was an exhibit that was circulated that shows the location of the speaker on our current site toward the eastern edge of the property, just west of the drive-through lane. And between the drive-through lane and the back of the property is a significant vegetated buffer. There's a wooded area that I've measured at about 100 foot in depth between our drive-through lane and the residential backyards. In addition to the vegetation buffer, we have about a 60 to 70 foot elevation that's higher on our site than the residential properties to the east. So we believe those are two items that allow for some buffering of the noise from the speaker. We also have circulated some documentation on speaker volume control. So this topic has come up on other projects as a concern with new drive-through locations. And the speakers that are being used, the automatic volume control allows for the speaker volume to be adjusted based on the ambient noise in that area so that the speaker volume can be just loud enough for someone in the drive-through lane to hear the speaker. So it would just be above ambient noise level, but would not be at a higher volume that may transfer a longer distance. And as the ambient noise goes down, the speaker volume would automatically adjust to be just above that ambient noise level. And there's also, that's been circulated, we have some information on the decibel levels as you get further away from the speaker. So that there's an example of a 45 decibel ambient noise level. So at 1 foot away from the speaker, the decibel level is 60 decibels. And then as you get to 2 feet, it's 54. At 4 feet, it's 48. 8 feet, it's 42. At 16 feet, it's 36. So it drops pretty significantly as you're going further away from the speaker. But it's just loud enough at the car location that it's slightly above the ambient noise level. So at 4 feet, it would be an ambient noise, or it'd be 48 decibels compared to the 45 for ambient noise. So we believe that as the distance gets greater, especially when we're talking about 100 plus feet, we don't believe that the noise will be transferred that far, just based on how quickly the volume level drops off with the distance using volume control. And in addition, I'd like to state again, the significant tree buffer and the elevation difference will play a large role also. We believe, based on all these things, that there won't be an issue about speaker noise being heard down at the residential properties.
Does the board
any
have
questions about what?
Yes. Does the board have any questions or comments for the applicant? And I will open us with the questions. So I did see, and just to let the record show, it is Staff Report Exhibit 5 that does contain the speaker box specifications that Mr. Wagoner was sharing with us. It does describe in this memo, which is from the HME components, that it does require the automatic volume control to be enabled. And just reading from this memo, AVC, which is the automatic volume control, will adjust the outbound volume based on the outdoor ambient noise level. When ambient noise levels naturally decrease at night, AVC will reduce the outbound volume on the system. That is required. Do you have information for us? Is that an automatically equipped item? It cannot be turned off. So in the event that in the future, that if they decided that they didn't like this anymore, would they have the ability to turn that off, or is that automatically part of the system and cannot be disabled?
I understand that it's a feature that comes with the system, and it's not by default enabled, but it can be enabled. And I believe that it would have to be disabled in order to go back to the default setting. So it would be on following the enabling of that feature.
Okay. So just to be clear, for what we are viewing here in this Exhibit 5, just for any from the public that are with us, at 16 feet, the decibel level of the standard system with 45 decibels of outside noise with the AVC active. At 16 feet, it's only a measurement of 36 decibels. So it's actually after 8 feet, it's 42 decibels. So it's actually at 8 feet from the outside speaker. The audio from the speaker is actually less than the ambient noise. Just for clarity of what we can see here on our screen, I just want to make sure everybody is aware of that. Okay, does the board have any other questions or comments for the applicant?
What will be the hours of operation?
And just Mr. Wagner, the hours of operation?
Sure. According to the franchise owner, he's anticipating 6 a.m. to 8 p.m.
How wide is your lane for the cars to go through there?
15 feet is what we're showing.
And how far back set from the curb is the speaker? You know?
Let me take a quick measurement. The speaker is centered 1 foot from the back of curb
Very close then.
to the curb line.
Okay, my concern is you've got a lot of competition with noise from the road. I was on that site a few days ago in the morning time, and with an app, however accurate it may be, I was reading 75 to 80 dB at the back of that lot in the area your speaker would be in. So you're competing against that, and the automatic volume control is going to try to compensate for that. I'm not sure that that's real feasible, that it may be raising it too high.
It would be, so with the automatic volume control, the speaker volume would be just above the ambient noise level. So if there were 70 decibels at the back of the property, the speaker would be slightly above that. For the default setting, the speaker, looking at the chart here, at 4 feet, which is about where the driver is sitting, it's 72 decibel for the default. So 70 decibels at the very back of the property, it sounds like the default range would be close to the volume that there would be if it were noisier at the road. But the sound does drop off, or the volume does drop off pretty quickly as you get further away, so that if there were significant road noise, that would be louder than the speaker volume as you were to move further away from the speaker volume.
Okay.
Or away from the speaker then.
Are there any other questions or comments from the board for the applicant? Mr. Wagner, thank you for your information. I will now open the meeting up to anyone from the public wishing to speak in regards to this request. We ask that you please come forward. Please fill out the sign-in sheet at the podium. State and spell your name for the record and give your address. Prior to your comments, you will be sworn in. Please try to limit your comments to 5 minutes or less.
Yes.
Please state your name.
Hi, my name is Karen Best. I live at 7 Maple Court, and I am here to represent residents of Lakewood Estates and also some residents on Iserman, which is right behind Scooters. First of all, let me say we're real excited about Scooters. We think it's going to do an amazing job, so we are not here to say no to the project. We are here, however, to ask you to reconsider where the speaker goes. I've heard all of the numbers, and those are all great, but unless you actually live in that neighborhood, you don't understand how the noise travels in that little holler, as we call them in the Ozarks. I live 800 feet from Scooters. I also live 1,000 feet from Kanakuk. In Kanakuk, we can hear almost everything they say all day long. Thankfully, they're just 3 months out of the year. And so this is going to impact us when we are out on our front porches, when we're walking around the neighborhood. I do know that one of the owners, that is not the 2 lots right behind it, but the one to the south of that, has 2 very small children. And he was very upset when he heard that the speaker was going to be facing that way, because even there's a lot of woods, the noise travels. I can hear the bands that perform at Paddle Wheel. I can hear the bands that perform at the landing. Those are nowhere near where we are. We can hear the traffic as it goes down Highway 65. We hear the horns, we hear the ambulances. So for us in our neighborhood from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m., we're gonna have to hear every order. Even though that noise level is low, I guarantee you we will still be able to hear the orders, tell what people are ordering. And so we're just asking simply, can you relook at how it's designed? And if you look, the speaker could come up a few feet, and it could face the south, which only has businesses, or even better, it could face southwest, which would face toward the hospital, which is a little farther away. And that's the only thing that we're asking, is to reconsider the speaker and the direction that it goes, so that we can maintain our quiet little neighborhood as quiet as it can be. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else from the public wish to speak on this matter? Please come forward. You will fill out the sign-in sheet at the podium. You will state and spell your name, and prior to your comments, you will be sworn in. And again, we remind you, please try to limit your comments to 5 minutes or less.
My name is, go ahead. I do. My name is Al Digert, 624 Iserman. Pretty much right at the base of this project, just a touch to the north. I'm on the east side, that's the east side of Iserman. And a couple of comments that, and I agree with Karen. I'm very pro-business. I'd like to see this thing happen. I just don't want it to, I don't want the noise to impact us. And as far as the buffer goes, with the elevation change in the trees, makes no difference. It would be better if it was the same elevation. You'd get more buffer. I would also like to note that this seems to be unlike any other business that's along the east side of Business 65 there, Branson Landing Boulevard, whatever it's called, in that almost all of those businesses have parking on the west side of the buildings. And those buildings actually act as a buffer. So you may actually get more noise than I do being at the base of the hill from Business 65, so anyway, I lost some train of thought, sorry. But anyway, it's kind of the noise thing there is just crazy, because if anybody's behind any of those buildings and they're just a normal conversation, a couple of, say, workers, that happens sometimes, people are working behind some of those buildings that are adjacent to this property, either north or south. You would swear, if you lived at my house, you would swear they're in your front yard or in your house. It just like amplifies. It doesn't make sense, because you think it'd be the other way around. You think, you know, an amphitheater, the noise was at the bottom, it would go to the top, but this is top to bottom. I don't know why, but I've lived there for 31 years, and that's the way it is. So anyway, I don't think that the natural buffering, elevation in trees, that's not helping. I do agree that we should think about repositioning the speaker, because it looks like, from what somebody said earlier, sounds like the speaker is actually facing east towards Iserman. And the idea that it starts at 6 in the morning would horrify me. I'm not a morning person. I would also, those are pretty much my concerns. I also represent Mark and Paula Lee, who live at 625 Iserman. And these are his comments. He says, I live at 625 Iserman, down the embankment below the proposed coffee shop.
I live at 625 Iserman, what?
Down the embankment below the proposed coffee shop. And he is stating that he is against the proposed business if the noise, exhaust, and electronic interference is not mitigated. He's wondering how this can be accomplished for all involved. He is suggesting that the owners of the proposed coffee shop should actually conduct a noise study. And in fact, listening to this previously, that was the thought that I had, was that, boy, somebody ought to go down to my front yard and listen to, somebody simulate the noise up there and see what you think. Noise study to determine the correct amount of noise disruption this commercial business will create in place in the nearby residential neighborhood. He is suggesting a suggestion that perhaps a 10 to 12 foot sound mitigation wall on the entire east backside of the property
30
line.
seconds.
I don't get two people, I got me plus my neighbor.
We do ask you keep your comments to less than 5 minutes.
What? Okay, thank you. And also sound mitigation wall, like half the length of the north and south property lines. He is against anything the city of Branson approves without a wall being built as he proposed. The Iserman neighborhood continues to endure the noise.
Please continue. Please finish.
The noise and dangerous Branson city-owned maintenance traffic by 5-ton trucks, front loaders, 25-foot trailers, street sweepers, large farm tractors, et cetera. City personnel driving back and forth in trucks on Iserman Avenue. We do put up with a lot on Iserman Avenue. Iserman Avenue, by any stretch of the imagination, is not purely a residential street. It's pretty much commercial because of all the city traffic that goes up and down it. Now, we live with it, I've been there, it maybe doesn't bother me as much. But to add to what we're already putting up with, we would really prefer not to do that, noise-wise. He points out, he says, what residential property owner would want a high-traffic commercial business near their home? Obviously not. Do not reduce the value of Iserman Avenue residential properties. The city of Branson needs to be very careful what they approve. I appreciate the Board of Adjustment hearing my concerns. This is from the Lees. And I think I've covered most everything here.
Thank you for that.
All right, great.
Thank you. Does anyone else from the public wish to speak on this matter? As you come forward, please be reminded you will be asked to state and spell your name for the record and give your address, and you will also be sworn in prior to any comments.
I do. For the record, yes. For the record, my name is Ed Brink. I'm the Ed Brink, EDWARDBRINK. And I live at 2823 Lakeside Drive in Plattsmouth, Nebraska. 68048 is the zip. And my wife, Deborah, and I are the Scooters Coffee franchisees that are proposing this project. I just kind of wanted to address the board and talk a little bit about the background of where we're at. As the planning director pointed out, we were before the planning commission and the city for approvals in 2021, and we got them. I don't know if you guys remember this or not, but there were 2 buildings on that property. And originally, we had only torn down the smaller of the 2 buildings, the State Farm agent office. And we got approval to build the kiosk on that part of the lot in 2021 without any reference to speaker box location. And so this was kind of a surprise when we got here. But in looking at the property as it was at that time, I felt like we were creating a traffic hazard and a noise hazard and creating a dangerous situation as far as traffic goes. So we bought out the other tenant and tore down that building, leveled the property and so on. So that's how it's in the condition it is in today. Just a little bit of background on it. We did that because we could improve the stacking of cars. We could improve access and ingress and egress so the cars didn't have to hang out on the street. We figured we'd have a lot of accidents if we did that kind of thing. And we just felt it was a much safer situation, which is why we're here today. We're back at this again. I just wanted to touch on a couple of things. First, I understand why the neighbors are concerned. It is a high traffic area and stuff, so there's some things to be concerned about, and I understand that. I can tell you, we have one existing store already in Harrison, Arkansas, and that speaker box, I have to walk by it as if I take the trash out to the dumpster, and basically the 16 and 32 feet distances that Wilson was talking about are pretty accurate, because about 2 parking spaces from that speaker box, I can't even hear the conversation. It's pointed at the car as the people are coming up, and it's designed that way to not broadcast, but to be very targeted in its approach. I would also point out what Wilson said about us being able to control the volume. We can enable the automatic volume control. We can also disable it if the ambient noise is too high. We can control that manually to adjust it to keep it from getting too loud, and we would be happy to do that. But some of the issues we can't really address. I mean, we can't address the noise from the speaker box, but we can't really address a lot of the other things that have been brought up. We can't address what kind of trucks the city runs up and down Iserman Avenue. We can't address what kind of cars go up and down, Branson Landing Boulevard. So I think that to ask one business to be responsible for that is not fair, at the least. But at any rate, if the board has any other questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them.
Is that sign parallel to the lane, or is it canted?
The
Speaker.
The speaker box?
Yeah.
Well, as they come around the back there, it's usually, anyway, they're sighted, and you can adjust how they're sighted, whether it would face straight this way or kind of angled. I would anticipate that it would be angled a little bit so that as they're pulling up in the car, they can get closer to it. So it wouldn't be just broadcasting straight east. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Brink. Does anyone else from the public wish to speak on this matter? Prior to closing the public hearing, I want to review the items thus far submitted for the record. I have 7 items from the city, which includes the PowerPoint presentation, the staff report, Exhibits 1 through 5, Exhibit 1 being the application, Exhibit 2 being the maps, Exhibit 3 being the site plan, Exhibit 4 being the site plan with distances, and Exhibit 5 being the speaker box specifications. Is there anything else from the city?
No, sir, sorry.
All right, thank you. Are there any items submitted for the record by the applicant?
There are no other items. Thank you.
All right, thank you. At this time, everybody present and wishing to speak regarding this matter has been given the opportunity to speak. I will now close the public hearing and open the floor for discussion between board members. You may ask specific clarifying questions of staff, the applicant, or anybody who has spoken. So we will now discuss.
The amount of noise coming off of Branson Landing Boulevard is
Could you
quite
please
high.
use your microphone?
Pardon me?
Just into the microphone.
Okay. The noise coming off the Branson Boulevard is quite high to start with, that the speaker box will be competing with. The automatic may remedy that, but I would suggest or recommend that if this is approved, that there be a restriction on the amount of signal level or dB level to the backside, the downhill side. I believe that's east, is it not? To the east, that there'd be a dB restriction level at that point that they would not exceed. This would negate if there is a problem with too much noise. It wouldn't have to fall back to ordinances. It would come back to the variance that they would have to adhere to. The trees are a natural barrier. However, in the wintertime, when they lose leaves, that makes quite a bit of difference. The 70-foot drop-off is significant because line of sight is the biggest problem with noise. With the drop-off, you no longer have that line of sight, as if something coming up from the landing would be a direct path to those houses, which would cause more noise. The ground is actually a barrier in this case, with it being a 70-foot drop-off. This is my knowledge, my opinion on it. Open for other discussion.
I would also add that the car parked by the speaker is acting as an additional sound barrier because the actual vehicle, the only instance that I would see is if a convertible pulled through and the speaker, depending on the height of the speaker. I would ask, that was one detail that was not entered into the record. I would ask, Mr. Wagoner, can you tell us the height of the speaker placement?
I would have to look that up.
And while he's doing that, just to, again, for the public's sake as well as for ours, in what we are looking at in the conclusions that we're required to go through as a Board of Adjustment that we're looking at are for the different applications for variances. The first of which it's a variance request that arises from special conditions and circumstances which are peculiar to the property in question and which are not applicable to other property in the same district. And further, the special conditions and circumstances do not result from the actions of the applicant. That condition would be as follows: the elevation difference and the wooded area are circumstances that do make this property unique. Have you been able to get that information, Mr. Wagoner?
I'd be guessing on the height. Looks like it's around 5 feet or so.
The speaker is 5 feet high off the ground. Mr. Brink, does that sound correct for your other locations? That's not, for other drive-through locations I'm used to, it's typically 3 feet or so. And just for the record, Mr. Brink did acknowledge that's roughly the height.
For the record, I would agree with you, roughly 3 feet. Certainly no higher than this.
Okay. So for other discussion for the board, I do believe that,
I have a
Yes, sir.
question still. Whether that speaker is to be directed east or southeast?
Mr. Wagner, we would ask for that information. Do you know if does the main direction of the speaker, is it perpendicular to the position of the car, or is it angled?
It's currently perpendicular to the drive lane, but we do have the option of angling it slightly. So that is an option with the exact angle of it.
So there is, so just to reiterate that, it is currently planned to be directly facing east, but there is an opportunity for it to be angled slightly to the southeast.
Correct.
Okay?
I think I might ask that as a condition.
Understood. So there are a couple items that we have discussed that I do believe are conditions that, should we decide to approve, would be required to be as part of this. One of which is the condition is that it cannot be directly pointed directly east. The other being that the automatic volume control must remain enabled at all times. Are there any other conditions that we would like to consider in terms of this variance?
I'd like to see a maximum of 85 dB at 20 feet from the speaker, as caused by the speaker, not ambient noise.
Okay, is there any other discussion from the board? All right, I will now entertain a motion to approve with conditions, the following conditions: that the speaker be mounted pointing toward the southeast, not directly east. The automatic volume control as described in exhibit number 5, shall remain on, and that the maximum volume of the speaker, 20 feet from the speaker, is no greater than 85 decibels. Do I have a motion for an approval of the variance with those conditions?
So moved.
Yes, we do. Our lawyer would like to come in with this.
Sorry, just for a clarification.
Yes.
I believe he also said 20 feet from no greater than 68 caused by the speaker. So should it
Thank
be
you so
caused-
much. Yeah, so the clarification being that the third condition is a maximum of 85 decibels, 20 feet from the speaker, with the volume only coming from the speaker, not entertaining any other ambient noise, City of Branson vehicles notwithstanding. But yes, just from the speaker itself. And the reason for this being that would validate the effectiveness of the automatic volume control. It would validate the actual truth that the speaker sound does drop off as you move away. The presence of a vehicle would enable that as a sound barrier as well. So
It prevents anybody from turning it up.
correct. So with those three conditions, I will now entertain a motion to approve the variance with those conditions for a variance from Branson Municipal Code, Section 94-87, pertaining to audible electronic devices for the property located at 550 Branson Landing Boulevard, Branson, Missouri. Are there any motions?
I move the motion be approved with the restrictions.
Understood. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Do we have any further discussion, board? No further discussion. Hearing none, Madam Secretary, may I have a roll call vote?
Board Member Babcock?
Yes,
Chairperson Pro Tem Duval?
Yes.
Board Member Nasalik?
Yes,
Board Member Thurkel?
Yes.
4 votes yea, 0 nay. Motion carried.
We are advised by our attorney that our decision needs to be in writing, and it is preferred that it be accompanied by findings of fact and conclusions of law. Therefore, I will entertain a motion to direct the city attorney to prepare our final findings of fact and conclusions of law consistent with our discussion tonight and our decision regarding Wilson Wagner's requested variance from Branson Municipal Code, Section 94-87, pertaining to audible electronic devices for the property located at 550 Branson Landing Boulevard, Branson, Missouri. Do we have a motion to direct the city attorney to prepare our final findings of fact?
Move to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Hearing no further discussion, Madam Secretary, may I have a roll call vote?
Board Member Babcock?
Yes.
Chairperson Pro Tem Duval?
Yes.
Board Member Nasalik?
Yes.
Board Member Thurkel?
Yes.
4 votes yea, 0 nay. Motion carried.
In the spirit of the city's red tape initiative and to expedite the process for our applicant, I will now entertain a motion to authorize the chairperson or acting chairperson, in this case the chairperson pro tem, to sign the findings of fact and conclusions of law as prepared by the city attorney and consistent with our discussion tonight regarding the variance presented by Wilson Wagner. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Madam Secretary, may I have a roll call vote?
Board Member Babcock?
Yes.
Chairperson Pro Tem Duval?
Yes.
Board Member Nasalik?
Yes.
Board Member Thurkel?
Yes.
4 votes yea, 0 nay. Motion carried.
Does the staff have any reports they would like to share?
Yes, sir, I do. Thank you. So a couple of minor things. Number one, as you would know, that this is actually kind of somewhat unprecedented this year that we've had several Board of Adjustment meetings in a row that prior to 2023, there was very light in the way of Board of Adjustment meetings. So I do just want to make you aware that we are trying to be very diligent with working through applicants and applications that we have going through. We have a great opportunity then, as you would be aware at our previous meeting, of an opportunity to look at how operations are made by the Board of Adjustment. So we had the very good presentation by Holly, who is our legal counsel for this particular meeting and for the Board of Adjustment. So we do thank her again for doing that. But I do recommend, number one, that if you have not been able to hear that information, that please go back and refer to that. It was really good information with regards to legal advice on how to operate. And we do know that because we do have some new members, that it is a good opportunity to look at some of that. So that's one thing I wanted to take note to. However, I also wanted to take note to how, anytime we're looking at legally how we handle things, it gives us an opportunity to make sure that we are efficient in how we present anything. One thing that we do is in the past, when items were presented as the public notice that was presented to the newspaper, the previous descriptions that were used was a legal description. One thing to take note with a legal description is that legal descriptions can be very long and very verbose, to say the least. So you would most certainly either need to be a professional that deals with legal descriptions regularly to understand even the description that is needed for a legal description as it is posted in the newspaper. The intent to post the location of the property in the newspaper so that people within the city that may or may not be affected by that particular property can be able to come to a Board of Adjustment meeting to hear the findings of fact, to hear their presentations and to verify if they would need to provide input on that. So because legal descriptions can sometimes not be very clear as to where that location would be, we're actually proposing that instead of using the legal description, that we would actually use a shorter description that would indicate either the address or the location, potentially the location nearest to the intersection of the closest roads to that particular property. We found that an address or an intersection closest to that property would allow for an easier description of that particular subject property. So what we're looking for your consideration is that we are asking to basically see your support in allowing us to make a slight modification in how we provide legal descriptions moving forward, eliminate the need for legal descriptions and move more towards a more concise description of the property. So in this case, as you see on the screen, we could potentially either use parcel IDs, use addresses, or intersections to describe a location. And then there's obviously a side benefit to that. Not only is it easier for the public to understand where that location would be, also it'd save the city costs because legal descriptions obviously are much longer than a more concise description. So I just wanted to present that to you to make sure that that'd be something that you would be agreeable to. So I wanted to just bring that to your attention. So thank you.
Use of the address is the most logical public posting.
Yes, sir.
Okay, any other reports from the staff?
No, sir, thank you.
All right, thank you so much.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Just for a point of clarification, and I ask that the court reporter also denote this as part of the hearing, I just need to clarify that in your findings, so when I do write the findings of fact, that your finding was that the enforcement and lack of granting a variance would violate the spirit of the ordinance, and that's part of your decision-making tonight. Is that accurate?
Yes, it would have violated the spirit of the ordinance. It also would have adversely affected the rights of the property owner, and it will not, the literal interpretation of the ordinance would deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed, and granting of the variance with its conditions will not adversely affect the rights of adjacent property owners or residents.
One more point of clarification. The public safety and welfare are secured and substantial justice is done in providing this variance and the conditions attached to the variance.
Yes,
And these are permanent conditions.
these are permanent conditions.
Thank you. That's all.
The Board of Adjustment will convene on August 24th, 2023 at 6 p.m. in the council chambers. If there are no items on the agenda for August, please note future Board of Adjustment meetings will convene at 6 p.m. in the council chambers. In accordance with rules and procedures, meetings will be held on the fourth Thursday of each month, January through October, and on the third Thursday during the months of November and December, or at the call of the chairperson and at such other times the board may determine. This concludes the items scheduled for the Board of Adjustment meeting. I will now entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. Do I have a second?
Second.
Madam Secretary, may I have a roll call vote?
Board Member Babcock?
Yes.
Chairperson Pro Tem Duval?
Yes.
Board Member Nasalik?
Yes.
Board Member Thurkel?
Yes.
4 votes yea, 0 nay. Motion carried. Meeting adjourned at 7:07 p.m.
The July 27, 2023 board meeting of the Board of Adjustment is adjourned. Thank you very much.